Well, hi, I'm Elliot, and I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you. And I'm going to really title this little thing called Growing. I'm a dad. My wife and I, we have two kids. Lila, she's 5, and Aiden, he just turned 3. And nothing screams growing like kids. It just seemed like just the other day that Lila was born, and now she's 5. This fall she's going to be doing kindergarten, and Aiden to be 3 is just crazy. Seeing them grow and develop as kids also shines light to me growing, or some ways not growing. See, I'm the type of person where when I get frustrated or when things are out of control, I get crammed up. I just get maybe a little more forceful, my tone changes, or I can just move a little too quick. We were watching Incredibles 2 one time, and during this movie, the mom, she's off away doing all these superhero things. And the dad, Mr. Incredible, he is there at the house trying to manage it all. His teenage daughter is she's having some feelings for a boy, and the boy's not recognizing her. His son is wanting to do sports and is struggling with math, and the baby Jack, he's discovering has powers. And so he's losing sleep on trying to figure out how to teach this math and how to do all these things. And the scene goes where everything comes down at once. And he loses it. He screams, "I'm Mr. Incredible. I'm supposed to be able to do all these things." And right after that moment where the dad kind of has a rant, my daughter Lila goes, "He's like you, Dad." Oh, it was like a shot to my heart. But it made me realize I have a lot of growing to do. I don't want to be recognized as the person that just explodes and goes off. I want to be somebody who's calm, who's patient, who's willing to listen. And I was able to recognize that I have a lot of work to do. Speaking with my counselor, he said sometimes our kids let us know the areas we need to grow in. Our kids are a great example of our emotional regulation. When they're frustrated, when they're in need, it identifies with us and how we need to continue to grow. Throughout this course that I've taken, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about others, but mainly I'm pointing it all back to me because that's where it starts with. I love in the book of Romans where Paul writes in Romans chapter 12, "Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect." This is the NLT translation, and I really enjoy it. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world. I think of this world right now where everything's a label. You voted this way, you're now this person. You go to this church, you're now that person. You eat organic, you don't eat organic. You let your kids have red dye, you don't let your kids have red dye. There's all these labels that just kind of create customs. Some of these behaviors are good, and some aren't great. Jesus points in a different direction. Jesus points us in a way to live where there's no labels. Paul continues in verses 3 and 4. "Because the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each one of you this warning. Don't think you're better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourself, measuring yourself by the faith God has given us, just as our bodies have many parts and each part is a special function. So it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body. We all belong to each other." Going back to that story with Lila in that movie, it gave me an honest evaluation. I thought I was doing better as a dad. I thought I had more patience. But she had the most honest evaluation of who I was and my behavior. I want to encourage you. And I want to encourage myself to continue in this honest evaluation. Am I thinking of myself better than the other person? Am I putting myself in a false evaluation and my true character comes out? If you don't have kids, your friends, maybe your spouse, maybe a coworker can give you an honest evaluation. Hey, how am I treating you? How do I do with listening to you? Do I only talk about myself? If you have a close group of people that you trust that will give an honest evaluation of how you're doing, I want to encourage you to do so. I want to encourage you to talk to those people and be intentional and say, I'm not looking for a great answer. I'm looking for an answer that might unsettle me. Because that honest evaluation allows us to really reflect and engage in the areas we need to work on. James, in James chapter 1, verse 19 through 21, says, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all, not just one, all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness of God or the righteousness that God desires. So get rid of all the filth and evil in your lives and humbly accept the word God has prepared for you, that He's planted in your hearts, for it has power to save your souls. I'm going to break this down just a little bit. Quick to listen. I'm not the quickest to listen. I can be quick to listen, but I'm listening for the answer I want to hear. Or I want to be quick to listen for that I can turn that argument into a different way. But that's not what James is writing here. He's writing for us to listen, to fully understand that person. And I believe this goes back to Romans, talking about being able to evaluate ourselves, to be able to understand where that person's coming from. I think this is important. I think it then changes how we view each other, how we treat each other, how we include each other when we choose to listen first. Slow to speak. Sometimes for me, I don't formulate my thoughts and they just spew out. It's because I'm not quick to listen. I'm too fast to speak. I want to get my point across. But if I'm quick to listen, I then can be slower to speak. I can then understand what the other person is going through. And slow to get angry. I feel like we can be in a world where we're constantly angry. We're upset about this place having COVID restrictions. We're upset about this place not having COVID restrictions. We're upset about that person not wearing a mask in Target. We're upset about whatever. And we can get angry really quick. And James is so clear in this. He says it does not produce the righteousness God desires. I think of Jesus' life and how Jesus lived out in a way where he was quick to listen. He was slow to speak. He was slow to get angry. I think of Jesus sitting at the well, just waiting. And for the woman to come up. And I'm sure the woman was maybe waiting to get ridiculed, waiting to be told who she was. And Jesus did that. Jesus told her who she was in the eyes of God. Not the eyes of how the humans did it or how the humans perceived her or the customs that the world built around that behavior. But Jesus saw her through God's eyes, through that heart. That changed her whole life. That changed of how she carried herself. That changed her joy, her excitement. That saved her soul. James closes it out in that verse 21 that God has planted in your hearts, for it has the power to save souls. I can't tell you how many times when I talked too quick, when I didn't listen, when I was quick to get angry, how much that ruined a relationship. That I chose being right instead of the relationship. I chose to let the wrong that the person did to control my view of their relationship. That's not what God has. I love how Stephen Lewis and Matthew Williams and Dory Baker, how they write in another way, how they want us to create a hospitable space for us to listen to each other, to ask ourselves some awakening questions. What areas do I need to evaluate my own life, my heart, my mind, so that I can see what God's will is? Am I reflecting on theology together with those around me that I trust, that I can understand, and even those around me that have a different theology, so that I can understand them more, so that I can participate in conversations with them? And then enact the most faithful step. This is their CARE acronym. I love it. It's CARE. Create that hospitable space. Ask self-awakening questions. Reflect on theology together. And enact the next most faithful step. I feel like James and Romans kind of point to this same space where we're evaluating ourselves, where we're figuring out, all right, God, who do you have me to be? How am I living in harmony with one another? How am I listening to the person I disagree with? How am I seeing them as a child of God? Going back to what I shared earlier of having a relationship and being right. I can be right however often I want. Because I feel like in today's world, when you feel like you know what's right, you can just say it. But it destroys relationships. Or maybe it's proving a point that can destroy a relationship. I know that Jesus, he didn't prove a point to the woman at the well. He proved God's love to her at the well. He proved the most important thing to her. And that was this unconditional love. The willingness to listen. Being slow to speak. And truly caring for them. So I want to challenge you. And I'm going to challenge me. Does my behavior reflect the love of Jesus? Do my outbursts, do my Facebook rants, my Instagram posts, do they reflect the love of Jesus? The way I interact with the person at Target or Trader Joe's or Walmart or Aldi, does that reflect the love of Jesus? Am I creating spaces that allow people to trust and be open and to be honest? Or am I creating spaces where people don't want to talk to me because I'm not quick to listen? That I'm too quick to talk? It's one of the hardest parts of growing, is going through the work. Figuring out the areas where I need to work on so that I can benefit those around me. My wife shared with me the other day something she found on social media. And it didn't have an author included with it. It just was a thought that the person had. And it said this: in my experience, I discovered the main reason God does not promote you prematurely is to protect you, not to withhold blessing from you. If the gift of God that's on you is greater than the character God has within you, it will destroy you. The preparation process is necessary to purify our motives and desires. God hasn't forgotten you. He's preparing you for the things He's prepared for you. Don't try to bypass the process. Who you are becoming is worth it. The strength you are developing is crucial for your assignment. God is for you and with you. Trust Him. See, I love that evaluation of themselves. Evaluation of me. That there are some things that God is continuing to purify in me. My motives, my desires. That He has something prepared for me, but He needs to do the work in me first, so that I can do the work out of me. We can't bypass this process. Paul and James were very clear on that. That we need to do our self-evaluation. That we needed to do the work so that Jesus can be seen, so that the love of God can be seen. So again, I'm going to challenge us to evaluate ourselves, to be reflective, to be able to create spaces. And really it comes down to our position. Whether we're holding ourselves above everyone else, or whether we're positioning ourselves to see everybody in the same eyes of the God who created them around us. Does my behavior reflect the love of Jesus? So God, thank you that you want us to do the work, that you want us to reflect, that you want us to evaluate ourselves, and God, that you want to be a part of that process, that we're not going into this evaluation alone to feel like we're worthless, but that we have worth, and that we can continue to work through that process of what you have prepared for us, so that our behavior can point to you, so that when we see somebody sitting at the well that we have already put a label on, that we can stop and see the person that you created, to see the potential, to see the love, to not put them in a box or a label, but to see them as somebody you created. God, help us create safe spaces. Help us to have care. God, help me to be slow to listen, or quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, you desire us to be more like your Son Jesus, to live those things out. God, that's what we're called to do. That's what we're calling ourselves to do while we continue to reflect and evaluate ourselves so that we can grow. And we're thankful for the growth, because growth produces life. And that life is contagious. Help us to have that contagious life. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Hey, thanks for tuning in.